Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone and Kenny for Wuxia Weekend. We're going to be talking about the movie The Enchantress, a 1983 Chor film. This movie has a pretty big cast, as we were discussing before the opening, but it includes Lieh, Chau-Wah, Jing, Max Mock, Lao Wing, and Norman Chu also makes an appearance in it. It's basically a sort of blend of wuxia and ghost story. It's about a female ghost who haunts the martial world for revenge to settle a 18-year-old grudge, and she largely does this by taking possession of people's bodies and using them to enact her vengeance. So guys, this was, I think, both of your first time seeing it. What were your initial reactions to this movie?
It's a gorgeous movie. The sets were great. The costuming was very well done. Yeah, everything was very visually appealing. And I enjoyed watching the movie, but I feel like the plot leaves a little bit to be desired. Either they were too ambitious and tried to fit too many characters in, tried to do a bit too much, and it made it feel like it dragged on a little bit. Mm-hmm. And they didn't really pace the fight scenes really well for me sometimes. Like, mostly the sort of the possession scenes were a bit weird and quirky to me. I did enjoy the actual sort of the martial arts parts of the fight scenes though. I thought those were quite well done. The choreography was good. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed looking at the movie more than I did watching it a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I had a pretty similar opinion. I mean, I liked the movie, so I don't want to come off as, oh, this was terrible. It was enjoyable, but it felt like a movie that if they'd just been a little cleaner on the plot or kept more focus in certain places, it could have been like a really great movie I would have been excited about. But like in the early part of the movie, I was really enjoying it. It was, when we have the early part with the swordsman going to the cave and meeting the daughter and everything, it was I was like, oh, I was really into it. And then as the movie goes on, there's just so many characters. It's like you kind of forget about the swordsman and the daughter for like a huge chunk of the movie, and they never really become that important again. And you're like, well, sometimes when a movie does that, it almost makes it feel like a bigger world. But I just wasn't very emotionally invested in the movie. But once again, it is a really nice looking movie, which alone makes it worth watching. And I really like those early '80s Shaw Brothers type effects with the glowy lights and
the highlighter on the paint on the film reel.
Yeah, that just really works for me somehow. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No,
but
I know what you mean.
At the same time,
it's that holy flame of the martial world, Buddha's palm look. It's that candy.
Yes. When I saw it was an '83 movie, I thought, ooh, that's Buddha's palm year. I thought maybe this will have the same feel as that. And like early on, it had that promise. I'm like, yeah, this has that look. So that aspect of the movie I loved.
Okay, yeah, I mean it was it's a classic Chor movie in that it's got all of the visual elements that you expect. It's got all of the overflowing characters that you would sort of expect. And I like that it blends the wuxia and the ghost story. I think that's really nice. I think where I would agree with the criticisms that I've heard from you guys is that it kind of falters in the length of some of the fight scenes. And the length of the fight scenes sort of overshadow some of the characters that are involved in the fight scenes. So you just have this spillage, this sense of like like something's going on, and all of a sudden fighting breaks out, and there's almost too many people to fit into the screen because there's so many characters, and it's a lot to absorb in an hour and 28 minutes. There are a lot of sort of stock characters as well that you sort of just you would sort of see in a lot of different kinds of movies like this, but because there's so many of them, you can sort of lose track. I forgot that the cross-eyed guy that's in like every other movie in the 80s is in this film. I forgot that that the leader of Beggar Sect is somehow in this movie.
And he dies in a non-canonical way.
Yeah.
But
like I was saying to Adam, before we started the podcast, it feels like if this movie was split into two parts and had a little bit more focus on some of the characters and a bit more background for some of the people, it would probably have been more enjoyable that way. A lot of the characters, we sort of get a glimpse of what they're supposed to be, but we don't really, get a sense for, how did Master Purple Robe become what he is? Is he just accepted as like a person whose cultivation is so high that it's basically an immortal? But then you have the actual immortals like the Sword Saint and the other, or the princess, whatever it was. It's like there's lots of little things in which would have been nice to find out a little bit more about. The story of the 7 stars would have been. 7 galaxies, whatever they would have been nice to hear a bit about as well. And I don't know, it's just like a lot of the times there it feels like a little bit more information about each of the characters would have made it a much better movie in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting too. It does have sort of like a heaven and hell type, like the movie Heaven and Hell. It's got that sort of, we're going up to the celestial world, and there's also like this sense of veering into the spirit world, and
that aspect of it is good. I feel like it had a good, like I said, the sets and the sense of place and the locations are all fantastic. But
like the world building is great, but the character building needs a bit of work. Like it's a very fascinating setting. Like they could probably like base an entire series of movies in this sort of universe, couldn't they? Like
yeah, and it's not like the characters aren't intriguing in a way. I mean, a lot of the characters I instantly kind of, like Lole and as Master Ku, it's like, oh, the first time he shows up on screen, I'm like, this character looks really interesting.
Well, he's always interesting, that guy.
He is. But the point is like, it's not like the characters were just boring or something, but I just never got to connect with these characters that I really wanted to connect to.
I think if you really want to see like ghosts in your wuxia movies, this is definitely a movie to see. But if you really want to see like a Gonzo style wuxia movie, you're probably better off watching Buddha's Palm or Holy Flame of the Martial World, or even Web of Death, which Chor Yuen was involved in. But yeah, this again, it's a good movie, but it has a few flaws. Now, speaking of the sort of the character development, it is interesting because there really are there are like 4 characters that really matter to sort of the dramatic heart of the story, and so you have the what is his name, Feng Chiwu, you have Shui Ling, you have her mother Tian Chao, and you have her father Jing, who's also known as Lan Tianyu, and they have sort of this tragic backstory. And when I was watching it this time, I was like, wow, that's like a really tragic backstory. But the first time I saw it, it kind of it happened so fast that, and I was thinking to myself, like, the movie might have been better because the last 30 minutes of the film is all the big final fight. And if they had taken out 15 minutes of that and devoted it to the backstory, I think it would have made for a better movie.
I had the exact same thought, down to the taking 15 minutes off the final fight scene. Exactly. I mean, they could have used it on the backstory. They could have used it on the young lovers or something. But just something. By the end, I just wasn't. It was an interesting visual fight scene, but I just didn't. I didn't feel anything about what happened.
I will say this: I think the fight scene at the end dragged. I think the most exciting moments of this movie are when she's being a ghost doing ghostly things to people.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the guy, but Master Swordsman Yu, I think his name was, the guy who she goes on a revenge path against 3 people, and they have to divide themselves into 3 groups in order to thwart her, and they all fail. And the first guy she goes to has a wife and a kid, and because she can possess people, she possesses the wife and then turns into a ghost and attacks him, and he stabs her, and he ends up killing his wife. And then she gets him to kill his son, and then ultimately kill himself by jumping onto a sword that she's holding. And she looks really terrifying, but there's also a lot of really cool little things that are, like her head sort of pops out of a fountain here. Her arms grow really long at one moment. Like it's just kind of dizzying, all the things that she can do to warp her form. And I thought that was really effective, and I would have liked to have seen a lot more of that. We do get more of it, but I would have liked to have seen that be the emphasis of her character.
Yeah, if it had been a little more of the horror stuff, but it did pull a Kubrick Shining trick in this movie, which was effective, because like the Kubrick trick is that if you've read the book The Shining, the caretaker who shows up, near the end of the story, in the book, he survives. He gets them out of there and everything. But in the movie, so if you've read the book and you go see Kubrick's movie for the first time, you're like, oh, well, he's not going to die. And then, boom, he gets killed. And suddenly you're like, whoa, I have no idea what's going to happen. Whereas with this, it pulled the same trick with Hong Chi-gong. Shows up, well, Hong Chi-gong's not going to die. I know he dies on a mountain fighting Wu Yong-feng. Nothing's going to happen to him. And whoa, okay, I guess he...
And he was played by Philip Kwok too, so that's like double protection. That's like, but yeah, no, he becomes like a stiff corpse after she bites him in the neck. He
died off screen as well, which was
yeah.
To add insult to injury. Like he was already dead by the time you first see him.
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying though about not that the fighting was all good. It's just that, and this is also at the point in a Shaw Brothers movie where you feel like they can go like that, and suddenly everybody just in sync starts fighting and is doing exactly the right thing for the camera. Like it's all sort of like a well-oiled machine, and it's almost too well-oiled of a machine for this movie. I almost was wanting more chaos in there, because it was just so there were so many people, and so But the fight scenes were all good, and I particularly liked a lot of the fight scenes with the daughter when she was possessed. I thought those were interesting to watch, and those were also a little simpler than some of the later fight scenes. But oh, go ahead.
Like the early fight scene between the daughter and Master Ku back at his place. I mean, I was still fully on board with the movie at that point. I had no complaints. Everything was working at that point.
So where would you rate this on like the Gonzo scale? Like if you're thinking in terms of movies like Buddha's Palm, like does it get to that level or does it fall a little bit short? Like because it seems like it's going for that style of wuxia movie to me.
Well, it's got ghosts in it already, right? So does that not already put it quite high on the Gonzo scale?
It does, but somehow it feels I don't know. I think it works, but I think it feels less gonzo than some of those movies.
Yeah, it's definitely less than... I can't think of any examples off the top of my head now, but I'd say as a whole, the movie, like if you're going from like 1 to 10, this will probably be on like a 6 or 7. Like not even that high on the Gonzo scale, to be honest.
Yeah. It's middle of the scale, because I mean, like both Buddha's Palm and Heaven and Hell are both just far weirder stuff happens in those movies than this. But I mean, this has some good creepy atmosphere in certain scenes. I felt the opening with the swordsman going into the cave had a really great ominous atmosphere. The scene with swordsman Yu. I mean, if the movie had stuck to that tone more, I think it would have been a lot better for it.
Yeah, no, I like the opening was great. I thought the opening was magnificent. Because you get what was the name of the place? It was
Moonlit Sky, I think.
Yeah, Moonlit Sky. And it's like this really weird cavern where something horrible happened 18 years ago and bodies just turn up all the time. And Fung goes to investigate and he meets a beautiful woman playing like a guzheng or something. And he follows her into the cavern, and then he ends up in some kind of underground cave dwelling or courtyard house. It's a little unclear. We learn a little bit more about it later on. And and her mother is there, and when he finds out, she's her mother, there's sort of this like, oh, but you look young, I know. There's sort of this sort of Dracula-like moment. And I thought all that worked really brilliantly. That then they have him drink a poison, and they're going to kill him, but Dawn comes or not kill him, but drain his blood. And I like the idea of this blood sucking ghost that is and up until then the movie has like a really almost like a scary kind of feel, and then it starts moving in other directions after that.
I like too the place inside the cave had a very Japanese feel to me too. I mean, it was just the set design on it was right. When it got in there, I kind of felt like, oh, this, when it was revealed that she was Japanese, I'm like, yeah, I'd already been thinking about that based on the set. It felt different.
Yeah. And then so just to kind of go over the plot, I guess after that, Shui Ling gets possessed by her mother. And he takes her to the Lieh character, Master Ku and Ku Didi, and they try to help her, but even Master Ku can't really do anything, and he has this big battle with her where he ends up in sort of a humorous moment. He has these invisibility talismans, but he's got to disrobe himself in order for the invisibility to work. So he's sort of cackling as he disrobes in front of her, and they end up having to bring her to the temple where her father is the master, and they capture the mother's spirit in a bowl, but her mother then comes as a cat to persuade her to steal the spirit, and she does, and all hell breaks loose, and there's a big battle, and then they have to go to the Purple Robe Master, who takes them to what was the name of the palace? Qingsha Palace, the Celestial. They go through something called the Yuan Mirror, right? He sends. Well,
the mirror is just purely to see who has fate with the with the immortals, I think was what the sort of Chinese was saying, like who has destiny to meet the immortals, and everybody doesn't except for the for Feng Shiwu and Shui Ling, so they go on a journey to try and find immortals, I guess. So
and that mirror was really cool because everybody looks in it and sees something different, and so when Master Ku looks into it, he sees a rainbow, and the guy is like, well, that's because you have so many distracting thoughts. And somebody else sees clouds. He's like, "Oh, that's because you're pure, but you're not the chosen one." And then when the two when Feng and Shui Ling look into it, they see the palace and the 7-star formation, and so they're the chosen ones, and they're supposed to go there. So you get this whole thing where, at that moment, because not Shui Ling, her mother, what is it, Tian Zhao, was that her name? She's released, and so she's going to go get revenge. So 3 of them break up into groups to go prevent them from getting revenge against the people in the martial world that she wants to harm. And it's at this point that we sort of learn the backstory, which is that she was part of a group of that came over from Japan. There were a bunch of Japanese samurai. And Jing was, I think, known as was it Jade Face Swordsman? Was that his name at the time?
Yeah.
He falls in love with her, and they get married. But some people in the martial world, including Hong Qigong, and believe that she wants to steal their Chinese kung fu, so they form an alliance against the Japanese, and they force Jin Jing to join them, and he betrays her. And I think the thing that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to see more of this, and I thought 15 minutes would have added a lot to the movie, is it's quite effective because you see him being so nice to her and being such a good husband, and then when we meet him, he's such a nice guy. But the betrayal is so horrible.
It's skipped over.
Yeah.
It's like the narrator basically, or it's, well, whoever's telling the story in the movie, I can't remember, tells us that happens, but we don't feel it happen. It's like, yeah, that should have been a stinging scene of, wow, that's awful. And then the whole rest of the movie would have felt different.
Well, and we do see the fight. We don't see like the details that lead up to the betrayal, and those details matter a great deal because when we see her back in the flashback, she seems like a really nice person, and she seems like a loving wife, and he seems like a loving husband, and all you have to go on after that is his behavior in the presence, where he's kind of pulling a Reverend Yi Deng type thing, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And that was what I was thinking of.
But all that we've had of him is positive, so I'm like, why did this guy betray this? Well, like, I understand there was social pressure to do so, but it was a little perplexing to me that he would be that, like her grudge seems pretty well, like it seems like a well-earned grudge, like that. Like they murdered her for suspecting that she wanted to steal their kung fu.
Yeah, that's a big part of why the last third of the movie, I just didn't know what to feel about things. It's like, okay, I mean, she's going too far with this revenge, but her revenge is valid to an extent, and I don't know. I just it was there's just a disconnect emotionally with all the characters, and
then we get them going to the three different people to protect them all. They were all people that were involved in the in her death, or they were descendants. Like Swordsman Yu was a descendant of one of them. He wasn't even directly involved, but he gets probably the worst treatment out of everybody. And and again, we don't even see what happens to Hong Qigong when Kudidi and the two Buddhist monks go to warn him. He's already been taken over, and there's sort of like almost a comedic scene where Hong Qigong, played by Philip Kwok, is actually the ghost, and he's trying to feed them human body parts and disguising it as delicious roasted chicken, and
yeah.
It
that
was
was a scene that worked.
Comedy, because the monks, I think all three of them had supposed to have sworn off meat, right? Because Kudidi introduces himself as a monk at some point, saying I'm not interested in women or whatever, and then the monks are obviously monks. So they jump straight on the wine and chicken.
One of them comments, let's not talk about this when we go home. So.
Yeah. Well, and Kudidi really leaps right into the food there. But it is interesting because you did mention that when they first introduced him. But yeah, and then after that they go to the Norman Chu character Yuen Fayang, who's also the descendant of one of the people involved. He wasn't even directly involved.
I think it was just the brother, right?
I think that's right. I think it was the brother. And I think it was brother of the Wudang clan leader or something. Was that his? Was that who it was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got lost in that part.
That's okay, but he wasn't directly involved is the important thing. And basically Hong Qigong and Swordsman Yu both show up, and they and they assist Tian Zhao, who kind of arrives as a damsel in distress and uses that to attack him, and so and I think he ends up getting his head chopped off.
Gets beheaded by all three of them at the same time. I think it was quite a stylish scene, actually.
What did you guys think of the Galaxy of the Seven Stars and the Celestial Qingxia Palace when they got there? Because that's the next thing that happened.
We need to know more about them. Why is there a little kid in the out of nowhere in the Seven Galaxies? Or what, Seven Galaxies?
It's the Galaxy of Seven Stars. It kind of made me laugh because it's just like a galaxy of 7 stars seems kind of weak to me, actually. That's a very small galaxy.
I think what they mean is that the 7-star formation in the sky is.
I know. I think it was a translation error.
They already mentioned like the Big Dipper on the mirror scene, right? So they couldn't have just called them like the Guardians of the Big Dipper or whatever.
Well, I guess wasn't that what
the constellation? The constellation of 7 stars might have worked too. But,
Galaxy.
Galaxy of 7 stars. Like, but
I'm gonna file that under translation issue. I think.
That's my impression.
But they all get named. We get Tan Long Star, Star of Wisdom, Star of Happiness, Star of War, Jamin Star, Lian Jen Star, and Pojun Star, who's the kid. I don't know what more you want, Kenny. They gave you names.
Again, it's another case. We get all these characters. It's like, wow, I'm intrigued by these characters. So it's not like the characters themselves were boring, but we just, aside from seeing them in endless fight scenes, it's like, man, I never get to connect with these characters at all.
Though I guess the other thing to consider is if we did get more information about them, that would be more time that we'd have. Like there would have.
I know.
I know. So, but again, we've already established there are sections of the movie they can take away from. But I thought it was interesting that they kind of get up there and they're all in a mural, and then they come out of the mural, and then pretty soon after we go into Tianzhou attacking the temple, and then this pretty much kicks it right into that final battle. This is like where the final battle basically happens. She goes, there's a big protracted fight. A bunch of times she's almost vanished or destroyed, and then she retreats to the tomb, and then she retreats to the I can't remember the name of the place.
Spirit Realm?
Her original home. I don't know why I keep losing Moonlit Sky. She retreats to Moonlit Sky, and then Spirit Realm, and and then she ends up possessing Jing, who sort of sacrifices himself in the end to defeat her, and everybody else escapes, and so except some of the monks. I think a bunch of the monks die.
They're not important though.
Yeah.
But I don't think we didn't lose too many big names, right? Most of the name people survived this one, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've said that the end battle was too long, maybe. But what did you guys think of it in general beyond that?
I like the whole shift to the spirit world and going in there. That was very interesting. I liked the peril that was created too. That they kind of got trapped in there, and it's like if the sun rose, they were all just going to get permanently trapped in there and turned into ghosts as well. There was a lot of cool supernatural stuff going on there. So I mean, I thought it was an interesting concept.
Yeah, like it would have been a really good scene if they'd shortened some of it. I didn't feel like we needed like the whole minute or 2 minutes of him struggling with being possessed. And there was lots of like in the sort of fighting scenes, there's a lot of unnecessary wire work going on. I mean, of her being flung against the wall and then back to the floor and then against the wall again. And
I gotta say, I like the unnecessary wire work. I'm a fan of that. But this had some interesting wire work at the beginning too. There was one scene where when he first fends off the guys that attack Shui Ling, he hits one of them and they fly backwards across the lake. That was I thought that was the best use of wire work in the whole movie.
I enjoyed that too. It was highly gratuitous wire work, and it was very entertaining at the same time. I was actually going to single that out.
But there's a definite abundance of wire work in this final scene, so I think a lot of people will agree with Kenny that it's it might be reaching saturation levels.
I don't know. I didn't have a problem with it, but I think part of the issue is that it's even said at like somewhere on the midpoint of the movie that only the person that created this problem can solve it. So we all knew. I mean, I just knew for all the fighting that's going on and on and on, this is ultimately going to come down to Jing Qing kind of making some kind of gesture and resolving the issue. And it's like all the fighting bringing in the galaxy of seven stars and everything. It's like that was all irrelevant. All that had to be done was for him to kind of settle things with her himself.
I have to say, if the galaxy of seven stars are pretty underwhelming if they can't handle one blood-sucking ghost. But I thought that there was also the whole thing where he vowed to the moon, like, if I hurt my wife in any way, may I die a horrible death. And so, like, and then she curses him. That, so like it's where it's all heading to. I think the uncertainty was more around who's going to survive all this on top. Like, will Shui Ling survive? Will,
Sure. We didn't spend enough time for that to be a big threat to me. Like, if I was involved in the love story between the swordsman and the daughter, if that was something that had been built up more, are they going to make it through together or be happy, or is this going to tear them apart? But the movie kind of lost track of that somewhere.
Well, that's another reason why I really wanted to get that middle story more, because there's so many little details. Like, they just gloss over, like, oh, and she had a baby. And like, and you're like, and when you first see it, you're like, well, wait a second, how could that be his baby? How could, like, he not possibly know? And then you're like, oh, all this stuff happened, and we have no idea of any of the details. And so there was he probably started fighting her shortly after she got pregnant, and she had the baby when he was away or something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, they said something like she was wounded and she had the baby as she was dying. I think they literally said that when they were telling the story.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to ask Kenny too to see what everybody's memory of this is. I remember.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
No, you might be right. You might be right. What I remember happening is, as she's dying, they say shortly before her death she had the baby, but I don't know that they.
It makes no sense because, like, I mean, I don't think the plot writers, the screenwriters have, like, overlooked this sort of thing. Like, the husband not aware that the wife is heavily pregnant.
That's what I'm saying. So there must have been a length of time where he was away from her, where they were separated because all this fighting was going on. Do you know what I mean? But that wasn't clear because the flashback is so rapid, and we get some important scenes. Like, we do get the scene where he's being tender with her. We get the scene where she's dying and she's spitting up blood and saying she's going to haunt him. But we really, I think, needed some of that middle stuff to at least just give me, a better sense of. And again, this is a genre where you do often get these really quick explanations for things. But I think it would have been a little less confusing, and the end would have had a little more weight if they had given the backstory some foreground.
But he clearly knew he had a daughter, because when they show up, Master, what's his name? When they show up with a daughter, Master Ku says to Jing Chang, it's like, hey, this girl comes from that waterfall and she is 18 years old, and he's like, oh, so it's not like. It's like he knows there's a daughter out there, because he's instantly expecting that.
They mention in the flashback that there were rumors of her giving birth, and that he was looking for her.
That's true.
So he was aware, but it sounds like he never saw the daughter. He never, and he only found out about her through rumor. So he must have not been. He couldn't have been there for the whole pregnancy, or she was just really good at, concealing it from him. For some reason.
Which would be weird if she did it before he betrayed her.
That means like almost like a year period where, like, he wasn't at home, and maybe like, and it's not like there was a massive gathering of, like, a Japanese army there or anything. It was like 100 odd warriors, right? So it sounds like any sort of operation wouldn't have taken, like, years to gather personnel for. It's like 3 whole sects of, like, the martial world going here. It's like the Huashan sect, which is traditionally, like, quite a hefty sect, and then Wudan sect, and goddamn Hong Qigong, right? So that's the whole beggar set going on there. It shouldn't have taken them much effort at all to, like, stamp out, like, this, army of, like, 108, or was it? I can't remember how many samurai there were. It's just one of the Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense for him to have been apart from her for that long to plan the betrayal.
Yeah. No, I
It,
agree, and
yeah,
I think the problem is I had to really work out this chronology in my head, and I found a way that I thought I could make it make sense, but I really want that laid out kind of a little more clearly so that the viewer isn't constructing that in hindsight, and it took me not until my I think my this would have been like my fourth time watching it, so not until my fourth time that I really kind of feel like I cracked that part of the story. Um, but
Yeah. And it would have, I mean, it would have added I mean, I think the scenes with, the three targets being picked off by her worked anyway. They would have worked even better if we'd had those characters that were involved in the past, had them in the flashback too, trying to get the treachery going. Because, we hear that they were involved in the past, but we don't really see it in any meaningful way.
but not and I guess one thing I know we kind of mentioned it, but I really did like the visual effects of the movie in general. We've touched on various aspects of them, but I thought the movie it looked really good. It was it's one of the last Chor Yuen movies, I think, from Shaw Brothers, and we did a few more. I think one of them was Lust for Love for a Chinese Courtesan, the sequel to Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan, and then I think he did maybe one or two more after that before leaving Shaw Brothers. But I'm not 100% clear on that. But yeah, this is definitely. I mean, I don't know. This is a movie I really like the movie, but I think it does have a lot. I think it also has flaws that are impossible to not comment on. It's got it's got that. There's something about that blend of the wuxia and the supernatural elements. I feel are really well blended together. You could equally you really sort of struggle to categorize the movie because I don't know, like what genre would you guys place this in if you were forced to?
Shuan, like fantasy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as up on the particular genres involved. I mean, I probably lean more to the supernatural ghostly side because that is what mattered for the plot. I mean, it had all the wuxia stuff going on, but that wasn't what was driving the plot. That was just powers that the characters in the plot had.
Though because the martial world is really it is a central fixture of the movie.
It is. But my point kind of is I could see taking this story and telling it and giving everyone just grounded normal sword fighting skills.
Okay.
But with the ghost and the ghost getting revenge, and the movie would still work. Whereas if you take the ghost out of the story, there's no story anymore. So I'd say that's the key thing, the key genre that everything revolves around.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I tend to see the movie as sort of like I guess like a wuxia ghost story, sort of like
Oh yeah.
But only because so many of the wuxia elements just seem really like the lightness kung fu, the martial sex, the fact that it is a Chor Yuen movie and he films it in the style of all of his wuxia films, it still feels like a wuxia movie to me. And it I mean, like it's inescapably Chor Yuen, this movie, like right down to like the costumes, like all of the little details.
Infinite characters.
Yeah, the infinite characters. Again, that's something that I think it's one of those things that it either kind of makes or breaks his movies. I'm very forgiving of plethoras of characters in his films usually. But I think this is probably one where there's such an abundance of them. Even if you know who they all are, it can still be kind of confusing.
Yeah, here's my feeling on that, actually. I've kind of thought it through. But I usually like having these random characters show up in wuxia movies. Something I like about the genre. Usually having something, like the Galaxy of Seven Stars showing up and be like, oh, cool, they show up, they go away, whatever, but it adds a little flavor. It's because this movie never developed any of the main characters enough, it feels like
Yeah.
there's too many characters. Like if it had just been able to focus on a couple other characters that we cared about through the whole movie, it wouldn't have mattered that there'd been all these extra characters. This would have been spice
Yeah.
on the meal, but we never quite got the main characters developed enough for it to hold together.
I mean, I thought that Tian Zhao got a bit of development. Like her development was pretty good, I thought, but that was because you had this
Yeah.
backstory. But with with her daughter and with Feng, you didn't quite get. And like you said, it's almost kind. I mean, he's still present, but he's not a very strong presence later in the movie.
I
Yeah.
mean, like he's supposed to be like the number one swordsman, right? As well
Yeah.
as what he's introduced as. But he was never really that impressive, and he didn't show any particular. Like, I don't know. It's just like you said, like he was introduced, and he does the key thing of bringing Shui Ling with him to the right people, and that's basically it. Like what else? He doesn't really do much else. And for someone who's supposed to be a main character, I don't think that's really a good thing, really.
And
Yeah.
it is a little bit disappointing because when he first meets her, he's very flirty and charming, and they seem to have like an interesting exchange. And it's like it's like, oh, this is like this might be an interesting love story or something. And
Yeah.
it doesn't really play out all that much. I mean, there is a lot going on. It ultimately becomes a movie about the ghost. I think the ghost side of it works. It's just that.
Well, you need at least one character on the other side that
Yeah.
works for it to hold together. It's like you can't have a story with one developed character. You need at least two developed characters for things to really coalesce.
You kind of get it with the daughter, Shui Ling, who's got the divided loyalties between her mother and the martial world, like even up until the very end. But they don't give you a whole lot to sort of do with that. You know what I mean?
Well, once again, that's like a triangle situation. She's between her mother and someone on the other side, but because we never get more than one scene of her being interesting with someone on the other side, there isn't any weight to it. It's like, yeah, we understand her mother, we understand her, but I don't know. I mean, if the love story was stronger, the idea of her betraying the swordsman would be something we'd be tense and concerned about, but I wasn't.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. But I think that was something that they were trying to like there were numerous occasions where it was like you could see sort of the conflict with that character.
Yeah, that's why it's frustrating because this movie comes so close to getting these things right. You can see it and you feel like it's going to happen, and it's like if it was it's just like it's so close to being like significantly better than it is.
No, I mean I think this is a movie you watch for like the really cool blend of wuxia and ghost story. Like that's
as an atmospheric movie, it's fantastic. Yeah, I can't knock it on that at all.
It's got a lot of atmosphere, but the story kind of runs into some of these issues. Now I wanted to do something a little different because we did get a comment. I had asked for some comments, and somebody in our wuxia community. I think his name is Kegeryu, but I could be mispronouncing that, so I apologize. But he says that he remembers this movie, and the reason that he bought it was Yung Jingjing, who plays Shui Ling, and Philip Kwok, who plays Hong Qigong. So I mean, we just talked about that, but I figured we could probably maybe talk more about those performances. Just to. I don't know what you guys thought of either of those characters.
I mean, Philip Kwok was on screen for all of 30 seconds.
I have to say, if he bought the movie for Philip Kwok, he might have been disappointed. I didn't do a follow up on it. I probably should have.
Yeah, I take it back and get a refund if I were you. It's probably a bit late for that now.
Yeah, I felt Yung Jingjing was very good at it. It's like that's one of the reasons I kind of got a little frustrated later in the movie because she was very good early on. I was intrigued by her, and it's just she kind of becomes a secondary character in the rest of the movie. So I'd say that she is very compelling in this.
No, and she's in a lot of these kinds of movies. Like she played Little Dragon Girl in Buddha's Palm. And she was in Holy Flame of the Martial World, and so she kind of she fits right in with the cat. Like I'm like when I see a movie from this period, you're pretty accustomed to seeing like a person like her and Max Mock and but yeah, I thought she was good. I think she's a very charming actress. I was having a lot of trouble. Again, this is VCD, so the video quality was not all that great. And one of the things that really drives you crazy when you're watching these kind of movies is, as a result, whenever I watch a film, I'm always looking to see when the stunt person is there and when it's the real person. And because she has the veil, I could not tell when they were when and if they were switching it up. But either way, I thought that whether it was her or a stunt person, I thought the physical performances for a lot of her fights were really cool. Mm-hmm. She had kind of like a Mei Chao Feng style arm strike. She was doing all these like claw attacks that I thought looked really neat. And yeah, the Hong Chi Gong, I think Philip Kwok, I don't know, I mean, you don't usually get to see Philip Kwok pretend to be a female ghost possessing Hong Chi Gong. So that is
very true. That's a rare sight in itself.
But
yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Say it was for what it was a good performance, and I mean I kind of like the way they had him kind of when they first show up. He's kind of off in the back of the hut and stuff. They kind of create an ominous mood from the beginning to tip you off that something's not right here. It's like, so I think it was a good performance. There just wasn't a whole lot to it to see.
And I have to say, there were 2 times in this movie we saw guys that were possessed by her sort of acting like they were her. And one of the little quibbles I had is she acted nothing like that. Like her physical performance was nothing like their physical performance. Both of them did exactly the same thing, but she didn't put her hand on her hips like that, and it was
have a hand that weird like lotus finger thing.
There's definitely over the top during the possession scenes. I thought the same thing.
I mean, I get why they did it. They were trying to convey the physicality, through the physical performance, what was going on.
Sure.
But it definitely did not match her movements at all. And I find whenever there's a body swap in movies like this, when the actors can really match each other, I think it's that much more rewarding. But yeah, so yeah, I think, I don't know, it is. I think I don't know. Like if you guys had to give this ranking 1 to 5, where would you place it?
It depends on what aspects. Like,
okay.
If we ignore like our issues of the pacing and the character development, I'd say this would be a candidate for like 4.5 maybe out of 5. Like the movie is gorgeous to look at. I mean, we've not really spoken much about the sets and the sort of the cinematography here, but the film itself is very nice to look at.
And it sounds good. It's got like it's got this like rumbling hum throughout it that if you've ever been in like it's got like a techno, like have you ever been to like a any kind of discotheque where they have like the fog comes out and the music matches the fog? It was exactly that feeling throughout almost the entire movie. Like you felt 5 degrees cooler watching this film somehow, because you could almost feel the fog washing over you.
And it the lighting in this too was very, very early 80s. It's like, the set design and everything was classic Shaw Brothers set design and everything, but the lighting that gave it that sense of time of being, and the special effects, of course, but it that stuff was great. But yeah, giving a numerical rating, I don't know. I'm really iffy on numerical ratings, and to give this one, it's like I'd probably give this a 3, because there's things I like and things I didn't like. But it's like, man, the things that are good about this movie it's like give it 3 is such an average, boring rating. This movie is not boring
Yeah.
and uninteresting. It's like I feel so I don't know. I feel like that 3 would be the right numerical rating, but it's not fair to this movie to say that.
Yeah, and I'd probably give it like a 3.5 or a 4. Like I think it was a solidly good, fun movie.
Hmm.
But there are things like I think where especially the more I watch it, that final battle really that's the thing that I think really hinders the movie more than anything else, because all the other stuff is actually kind of engaging and fun. There's all these little things going
Yeah.
on, and then you hit this long final battle, and it goes on just like 10 or 15 minutes too long. That's they could really reduce it or put something in between it, something to
Add more dialogue to it or something
Yeah.
while they're fighting something. But
And I mean,
Instead of just screaming all the time. That
Well,
was another
yeah.
thing as well. There's a lot of a lot of Bonnie Ngai screaming, being flung around the
Yeah.
room a lot.
No, I have to say though that those really did punctuate the action a lot. Like a lot of it, like whenever the ghost would attack, she would kind of do something like that, and it kind, I don't know, it seemed effective, but yeah, I think that I'm usually here for the action in a lot of these movies, and so there's no poverty of that here. It's just that, and again, the Chor Yuen style of action, he doesn't do the action choreography, but the style that he tends to go for, you don't need quite as much of it as you do with, say, like a Chang Che film or a Lau Kar Lung film. I find with Chor Yuen, I think his strength is actually the storytelling usually, and so if we got a little bit more, I think that story would have been really powerful, because you can really see, the emotional weight it would have. It's just that again, that long battle kind of cuts into it a bit, and so, but yeah,
Like, I don't know, we again, like I mentioned before, it's like if this was split into 2 parts, I know maybe stretch out some bits, fill out a bit more details, like give a bit more backstory to people, and maybe show how Feng Shi Wu and Shui Ling found the what was it, the what palace was it?
yeah,
The
they kind
Heavenly
of glossed
Palace or
they glossed
whatever.
over it
They
so
glossed-
much. I thought they just walked into the mirror. So,
Yeah, and they could have up the tension of defending the 3 people a little bit. Trying to find out who's the target and like how can they defend against it or whatever. There are a lot of little things that could have fleshed out that part of the movie and stretch it out into its own whole movie. And then after that, they could be sort of, I don't know, more information. The next part of the movie could be the whole sort of setting up the confrontation after they've gotten the support of the galaxy of the seven stars or whatever, and little things that they could have done to make the plot longer, but then chop that in half into 2 separate movies.
yeah, I think I definitely think they could have put some more in there, and taken some out of that ending. But I don't know, any final thoughts before we head out?
I think I've said everything I've got to say.
Yeah, and while we've been quite sort of harsh on sort of the character and plot stuff, it was still an enjoyable movie, and it's really nice to look at. So
It is. Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of the genre, it's definitely one to watch. It's just, I said my complaints are more frustration that it's like, man, this should be a classic. This
It's so
deserves to be a
close.
classic.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's because Chor Yuen's one of my favorite directors. If you, I think both of you guys weren't here for Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan. I think it might have just been me and Dion.
I missed that one. Yeah,
But
Yeah.
that's probably his best movie. I think that's arguably his best movie, and it's shot so beautifully, and I think that this is a movie that's shot very beautifully, and with just a few tweaks could have been one of his great films. That's like another great one that he had was Duel for Gold, I think was the title of it. There's a few of his that are just really staggeringly good. Magic Blade would be another that people really really like. But this one, it's a good Chor Yuen movie. It's just not as great as it could be, and that's sort of the frustration. but again, I think it really the blending of wuxia and supernatural stuff is really perfect here. I don't think I've ever seen that done quite as much to my liking as it was done here. Especially with the ghost part of it. Because a lot of times, especially in the Shaw Brothers movies, not so much later on. Especially when we get into like Chinese ghost story and stuff. But a lot of the Shaw Brothers movies, the moment you have a ghost, it automatically means like you're not going to see any martial arts. Do you know what I mean? Or vice versa. Like that was in the earlier like late '60s Shaw Brothers movies. That sometimes seems to be the case, and so here it's nice to get both sort of fully committed to, and balanced a bit. But yeah. So and what's our movie next week? Is it Vampire Cleanup Department? Is that the?
I believe so. Yep. Vampire Cleanup Department.
All right, so that's a much more recent movie. So this is something. This is one that I think people will probably number one, they'll have an easier time finding if they wanna catch it. Some of these movies are obviously hard for people to track down. But if you want to keep up with the conversation, definitely check out Vampire Cleanup Department and listen in on the podcast. We'll be back next Friday, like every Friday, talking about a wuxia or wuxia related film. And also you can go to our Patreon, which we have a link to in the description, and support us if you want to. That helps us do things like buy movies and just sort of do upkeep cost. So again, the name of the movie is The Enchantress. It's a 1983 film. It's by Yuen. And I think we all liked it, but we all had some, reservations about certain aspects of it, and we wanted more from it. We thought it could have been a better movie. So we'll leave it there, and until then, we will talk to you later.